Hi, this is Uma from Women's March Global. Today is the last webinar that we are going to be holding for the month of May, and we are talking about end violence against women this entire month. It is part of our 5 actions to end gender-based violence. Throughout this first part of the year, we have been focused on telling the stories around gender-based violence so that people can really understand that the stories of women across the world are incredibly similar and their experiences are similar. In this month of May, we've had conversations with our global community from Barcelona to India to Taiwan to Jamaica to Zimbabwe to talk about the shared experiences of women, to talk with our organizers and those that are on the ground about what they are consistently experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And today we're concluding with a discussion between Natalie, who is our chapter ambassador from Women's March Kingston, Jamaica, and then Haley, who's from Women's March India. And I want to thank both of you for taking the time out to have this discussion. I know we're on 3 different time zones right now, and it's hard to coordinate. So thank you so much for taking the time out.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So Natalie, I want to start with you. You know, in the discussion that we had with you, you know, you were sharing just the very high rates of violence that women and girls are experiencing in Jamaica, and also the brutality with which these instances of violences are occurring. Since the time that you has there been more that has happened, and has there been anything positive in terms of, you know, the government responding or anything in that direction?
So I spoke with Tenzin ago, I believe, and just yesterday there were 2 more incidents that I saw. One is of a woman. Her husband is a police officer, and they got into a domestic dispute, and he ended up shooting her 12 times. And also, there was another one where there was a case brought before the court, and the perpetrator of rape against a 12-year-old girl got 5 years in prison.
Wow.
So we have this systematic problem. The decks are so stacked against women and girls in terms of how we respond to these incidents. It's ridiculous at this point. And no, there hasn't been any talks about it, no outrage. It's just another day, you know, of dealing with this in Jamaica.
Now, I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. 5 years for the rape of a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah.
But I say this, and then Haley, in the conversation that you had with Tenzin, you know, you brought up also the case of Nirbhaya. You brought up the policies that are in place that prevent women from seeking justice, that the government itself in India perpetuates these predatory behaviors. And especially given that the results of the election have not gone the way most people have wanted them to, the violence that has stemmed as a result. And what I've seen, and I you know, I would love for you to talk about this further, but this rise of the chokidar, you know, the chokidar is literally a word for like night watchmen, but these are men who are policing women in the most violent way possible. Can you just briefly talk about that?
No, in fact, you know, when we were organizing the April 4th event, and it was very, you know, we sort of thought that we will actually have the slogan as saying that, you know, we don't want a chowkidar, because all our lives what we've had is somebody actually policing us in some way or the other. You know, you're in your homes and you go out in your community, and yet another chowkidar is what the government and the Prime Minister himself started calling himself, this chowkidar, who's basically a policing agent. And as women, that's the worst thing that you can actually ask for. We don't need any more chowkidars. We need safety and respect and, you know, security in a different way, rather than somebody actually policing us on a daily basis. And well, the last, I mean, after Tenzin and I spoke, and I think the most overwhelming change has been the election results, which has really numbed many of us. And it is really taking us a bit of time to, I mean, today is was the swearing in ceremony, for us to understand how we take, how we move forward from here, because there is a lot of discussion about how there is a course shift towards a right-wing ideology, and there is no shying away from that. And what does that mean for us right now, for women who have been trying to voice, and claim spaces for equity and equality? What would it mean? Because I mean, it will now become even more worse and aggressive. And it is just, it's really like something that we have to figure out, and I mean, very carefully chart our way from here. There are two women, I mean, already there were these two women member of the parliament who've been elected from Bengal. And the fact that they're excited, these two young women who are excited to be part of the parliament, the kind of body shaming and the kind of shaming that they have been put through is just, it's just symbolic as to how it is going to be for the next 5 years, and the kind of battle that we'll have to now wage basically and handle. And as I had said to Tenzin, that it's like we're going back to even questioning the basic principles of what we've already attained. Now equality, equity, all these things are now being questioned at a very basic level. So we will actually have to start from a really, really point where we've possibly began. I mean, things that we sort of took for granted is not now for granted. We have to fight for those spaces of equality, of expression all over again. So it's going to be a very, very difficult time, and we need to embrace ourselves and go ahead and plan things now.
Now, you brought up the rise of the far right in India, and we've seen this, with Hindu nationalism. Natalie, I want to ask you, because you and I have spoken in the past about the deeply embedded misogyny and patriarchy that is very prevalent in Jamaica.
Yes.
You see the violence that women are experiencing and young girls are experiencing as a rise of the far right, or is it still connected to this deeply embedded misogyny and patriarchy?
I think it's deeply embedded in our misogyny and patriarchy because we have two parties in Jamaica. We have the People's National Party and we have the Jamaica Labour Party. And in the past, we have had the People's National Party. They're more liberal, they're more middle class, and they have had a women's movement that was very strong and very, militant, with women fighting for rights and everything like that. And they achieved that. But over time, I would say over the past 25 to 30 years, we have not heard much from them, And with all of this, all the violence that we see today that have escalated, we still have not seen, women mobilizing. This women's movement, there's still a thing within the People's National Party, but they have been silent. They have not been boots on the ground, calling on the government in power, whether it's their party or the other party, to act. Mm-hmm. So I think we're at a point where we've accepted this so much. And of course, there are other things that's happening in society that I guess it would be considered more important to the majority of men that are in our parliament, So we're not getting anywhere until our government, because we have different organizations in Jamaica, women's organizations, that have been calling on the government to act, and nothing's been happening. Mm-hmm. So now we can only march so much, we can only protest so much. At this point, we need the powers that be to step in, recognize what is happening, and act accordingly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you brought up governments, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into this, because there are many layers of oppression that make up the fabric that, when we talk about the sexual violence, the violence that women experience. And part of that systemic oppression is what governments do to strip women's rights away. And we saw this recently at the United Nations when the US threw a big fit because there were sexual health and reproductive rights in the statement in terms of sexual violence and conflict. And, the statement ended up being scrubbed. And we saw people, I think it was 2 member states that abstained from the vote. And, there is a concerted effort among governments, and we see this collaboration, for example, between Modi in India and MBS, Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. We see the coordination between the United States and other kind of, dictatorship regimes that do not have progressive policies in support of women's rights. I want to ask you, in terms of this concerted effort of government undermining women's rights, do you feel that in your local areas of where you are, do you feel that it is indeed this concerted effort by different governments on a global scale to strip women away? Or do you think that it is just a continued fight that we are experiencing? Ahelia, you can take this question first.
Well, I don't think in India the experience has been like, I don't think there is any sort of a orchestrated effort to undermine women's rights. And I sort of mentioned it before that the laws are really progressive and we have everything right on the books. The problem is the fact there is inaction. So if there, and that's how this government and other people have worked, is that you just don't act on it. You don't do anything about it. You continuously slash budgets of programs which are going to help women. So by default, you are basically undermining it, right? And like in cases of violent, as I said, conviction rates have been the lowest in 2016 and thereafter, whereas the laws are extremely good, they're very progressive. But if you're not going to implement it, then that it's of no use, right? So the conviction and all these kind of reporting can only happen if the lowers, as you said, the government is just not one monolithic body, right? There are layers and layers of it. So from the local governance to, from the state, from the district and at the panchayat level. So there are different layers and actors of government that are there. And if they are not going to act, and the message from the government and the attitude of it is that it's fine if you don't react to it, and it's fine if you you don't do anything about it, then that's what it is going to happen. And also the publicness of violence is the worst, because it's, as I said, I raised the issue of Kathua rape case, or even there was this video which went viral even on the day the election results were out, where this Muslim guy was beaten up and in Madhya Pradesh and made to chant Jai Shri Ram. There was a woman as well who's been, she's been beaten up with a slipper. I mean, this kind of this naked violence is obscene. I mean, for the fact that you're allowing this kind of violence to be seen and to create a publicness itself says a lot about what kind of culture you're sort of trying to promote. And nothing happened about it. And, people sort of said these things about how horrible it was and whatever. And there was, one of the MPs of Delhi, he's actually a famous cricketer. He commented on Twitter saying that this cannot be acceptable, because we are a country where, these communities have lived together for ages, and, this kind of violence against them is just, this is not what we are. This culture is not what we represent. And that poor guy has been trolled by his own party because he is from BJP. He's won the election. He's just been like trolled very, very badly. So this itself sort of, establishes a particular kind of narrative. And that's what we are scared of. It's not the laws which are not there, because we do have very good laws. But you have to, it's like what we've been discussing, that, Ambedkar, who made the constitution, he said, we've given ourselves the best constitution, but it will depend on the people who are going to implement that constitution. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have the right kind of people, you can have the best book and the best thing written, but nothing is going to happen. And that's what we're seeing. Mm-hmm. Because you have the best laws, very progressive, everything, but if you don't do anything with them and convictions are not going to happen, no actions are going to take place, people are just going to let things be, and it is going to get regressive from down here.
So I want to pose the same question to you, Natalie, to a point that you just brought up. But Natalie, this question again, do you find that this is, in terms of this coordination by different governments, or I will let you take it from there.
Well, I don't believe that governments, at least not in Jamaica. I'm sure that there are other countries that, they would rather women not have certain rights, right? But in Jamaica, like she said, we have the laws on the books. It's that we don't act upon those. I think that when we fail to act, when something is going wrong, there are those who act and those who fail to act. Either way, when we don't act, we're complicit, right? So I think that in Jamaica, it's just that women's rights and well-being is the lowest on the totem pole. So that is going to be the last thing to be addressed, if ever. And if we don't get up together as women in society, we're not going to get anything done, And it's just, I don't understand. We have, our parliament is majority men, but we do have women in there, and they know what's going on in society. So there's also, in my opinion, a classist issue that's there as well, because those women in parliament, they're not the ones that are falling victim to the murders and the rape and the abuse. So it's not important to them, because they're not a part of society, where they're seeing these things all the time, or where their neighbors are falling victim and things of that nature. So it's just it's a lot of things. But yes, we have the laws on the books, but it's just that they're not being implemented properly. We have the Sexual Harassment Act that was tabled in Jamaica Parliament by the last female prime minister, and it's been sitting there for years. So again, women's issues, it's down here compared to other things that need to be addressed.
So I want to bring up one last question to you both, because both Jamaica and India were British colonies, and I bring this up because both of you responded to this question of orchestrated government oppression by saying that we have the laws in place, they're just not being implemented. And I'm bringing up colonization because there has been a lot of talk, and we have worked in the past with Jasmine Kaur, who did these workshops called Decolonize Your Mind. And I want to talk about how the effects of colonization, and this might be a mini essay, but how the effects of colonization have reified these deeply embedded misogynistic patriarchal structures. And I say this because, when we're talking about violence against women, and when we say that the laws are in place, but they're not being implemented, who implements these laws? It is men who are implementing, in many cases, these laws. But in many cases in colonized countries, what we see is that when the colonizer leaves, there's a power vacuum, and that structure is filled in. And usually it is men who take the seat of power and then interpret laws and govern in the way that that they want to, right? And in some cases in formerly colonized countries it has worked out, in many cases it hasn't. So I want your opinion on just that viewpoint. Do you think that we are seeing such deeply patriarchal embedded structures because of how colonized our minds have also become over time, because of our histories, our shared histories here, especially on this call? What do you think, Natalie?
Yes, I think that's a very important point to make, because a lot of our laws, most if not all of them, were implemented by our colonizers. And so when they left, we are still left with these laws that were not created for us in the first place. Now, an example of that is abortion in Jamaica. The British, they left and they went back to where they came from. They changed their law, I believe, in the 1960s, where women, when we had the suffrage movement going on globally, we had women say, listen, we need reproductive rights, we need this, we need that. And so they changed their abortion laws to where when women, and I'm not saying that abortion should be used for all the wrong reason. I'm saying when young girls are raped in places like Jamaica, where we have a high rate of rape against young girls, when they're raped, if they don't want that sperm to mature into a baby, they should not have to do that. Okay. When there's incest and when there's a threat to our lives during pregnancy, we should have a choice. Now, Jamaica is a very religious place. I think we have the most churches per square mile. And so because of the religion, and because of our religious beliefs, we say absolutely not to abortion. We don't care if you were raped. We don't care if you are a victim of incest. We don't care if you are having medical issues and you're going to die during pregnancy. My best friend growing up, her mother passed away when we were young from complications during pregnancy. She didn't have a choice, and this debate is ongoing in Jamaica. There are different groups on both sides of the political aisle that are saying we don't have to completely legalize abortion, but let's consider circumstances where women, should have a choice to an abortion. And, the religious organizations in Jamaica, they're saying no. They put so much emphasis on what God said and what the Bible said, but there's no consideration for the victims of their beliefs and this law. And I've said many times, the British gave us this law. They've changed it. Why can't we do the same? Why do we hug this law so closely without thinking of the people that it affects? And I know at least 2 women in Jamaica who have had botched abortions and have died. One was raped, and the other one, I'm not sure what her reason was for having an abortion, but they ended up dying because of botched abortions.
And in many cases, as you say, Natalie, the British gave you all that law, but in many cases, the British were also missionaries spreading their version of Christianity as a way to colonize, right? And
yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in many cases, they would say, if you convert to Christianity, we won't, remove you out of your country and deport you as a slave in some, in some cases. So it was a tool for colonization in many respects, and now it's been deeply embedded to utilize it almost as a, as a way to further that systemic oppression against women.
Yeah, religion was used most certainly, not just Jamaica, but all over, to, break people into what the colonizers wanted them to be. And so some of us have liberated our minds and have been able to see things a little differently, because I grew up very religious, on both sides of my family. And so, if I were to continue as I was raised, and I'm not saying that religion is a bad thing or beliefs a bad thing, But, you know, sometimes despite our beliefs, we have to be fair
Yes.
when it comes to things that affect other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Natalie. Hilly, I want to turn to you. And now, you know, as Natalie's in Jamaica, you're in India, both former British colonies. You know, I think it's a really relevant question, especially given that your answers were so similar in terms of the fact that the laws are there, but they are not being implemented. And so how, you know, in terms of that history of colonization, how does that inform this deeply embedded patriarchy and misogyny?
Well, I think, I mean, the two big laws that we still have, I mean, we had and we were battling with was the 377, Article 377, which basically made same-sex marriage and any kind of as a criminal affair. And it was actually a British colonial law. The other one, which got repealed very recently, and the other one that we're still sort of battling is the sedition law, which was basically it was a British law, and it still exists. And I mean, it's been put to use to sort of, you know, do everything that the government is right now doing. It's being used by this government, and also like briefly by the previous government as well. But I think I would like to sort of pick on what Natalie just said about the religion and how the rise of the Hindu right wing has deeply done that to us. And we sort of feel, because right now this election, we had the highest number of women elected members ever to be done, mainly because there were two parties which given, I mean, there was one party from West Bengal which gave 40% of tickets to women. So there are lots of women which got elected, though it's not still the 33%, which has been a reservation which has been demanded with the women's movement for long. But we do have a lot of women in the parliament this time. But what is going to be the problem is the resurgence of this Hinduized way of looking at women. So so there is this great way of using the religion, as she was just saying, Natalie was saying, to push you back into the domestic and to, you know, do things like there's been this big discussion about this really sort of fringe actress in Bollywood saying that Sati Pratha was actually a matter of choice, and how she uses that as to saying that it was apparently it was the way to run away from the Mughals, that women actually jumped into the fire to kill themselves. Sorry, Oma, I can't hear you.
I want to just clarify that what you're saying is that many people don't know what that is. It's throwing yourself on the funeral fire, essentially, to sacrifice yourself, and that was, you know,
with your husband, your dead husband. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just to have this as a discussion at this point in time, as this day and age, where you're celebrating an event like this and saying that, look, women did it by choice. I said, I mean, it is appalling that you are having a discussion like this and people are actually saying that that this woman is right in saying that it was a matter of pride, and it was a matter of choice that, you know, women chose to sacrifice themselves when their husband died. I mean, absolute, you know, ridiculous, lack of imagination and lack of understanding about history. I mean, we've just gone back to and we're going back to Stone Age, where we're saying like jumping into fire is a matter of choice. I mean, so this is where we are going with religion right now. I mean, which is like, I don't know if it is misogyny, it is going to be patriarchy, it's going to be religion, it's just going to be a really, really strange concoction of all of these. And I mean, we're sort of speechless with the reaction that we are sort of seeing of women who are educated and of this century, and saying
it's
that
transitioned.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely right. No.
So we have these public figures of women leaders who are very good wives, doing the Karwa Chauth, like fasting for their husband's health. I mean, that's what a good Hindu wife should be, rather than somebody who's, who's saying that down down with the government and up with revolution. I mean, that's not a good wife and that's not a good woman in this country anymore. So that is how, I mean, if you are not towing the line, then you ought to be raped. I mean, of course you need to be raped. Of course, that's your punishment, to not to be the good wife. So that's where we are getting with religion right now.
It's extremely troubling. I come back to this Chokidar thing because I saw this article about how a group of men essentially trolled a woman so relentlessly online because they saw her at a club just after the election, and said, "We are the night watchman, and we will essentially rape you if we see you again." This is a level of extreme violence that women are facing right now as a result of the rise of this Hindu nationalism, and it's not something that we can undercut or discuss lightly. So, speaking on all of this, it's really hard. And I was in another conversation today where the question was asked to me, how is there hope? Because it doesn't seem like there is hope. It seems like we're fighting on all fronts at the moment, in regards to our right to just live a very safe life, our right to access to abortion, our right to be free from violence. Do you, in your local areas, in your own lives, do you see hope in moving forward? Natalie.
That's a tough question. I think it's a tough fight, and I say that because we are fighting misogyny, right? And we're also fighting with women that have been so conditioned, in the homes and in the churches about what women should be, and we're seen as, the evil, the feminists and the evil, and they refer to us as the third wave feminist, and it's such a bad word. So we're trying to get through this with the men who believe that our place is here, and we're fighting with the women who also have that same mindset. So it's an uphill battle, and we have made strides over time, but there's still a long way to go. Hopefully, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I hope that when she becomes an adult, that we will be a little further than where we are now. So it's a good fight. It's a worthy fight, but we have quite a ways to go.
Sorry, I was on mute. Haley, I'll let you have the last word here on this last question around hope.
I think, I mean, as I said, this particular the political situation has really numbed us. But there is hope because, of course, there's hope because not everybody thinks that sati is a good thing. And we are hoping to get all these women together because I think the culture of fear actually pushes people back. And I think the uphill task is actually to reassure them that there are other people feeling as oppressed and as lost as they are, and also to start sort of because there is a blinding light right now. This entire this Modi thing, it's like this. It's like a blinding light where people are just can't see what is behind it, and the only hope is this, that it will start fading and we will slowly see what it actually means in our daily lives, and more we can actually highlight these things and show them that actually this government is not for the women. I mean, they are not pro women, they're not pro poor. The more we can show it more visibly, the better, I mean, faster our work will be. But it is like it has been a pushback. It's a huge pushback, and it's a new ways of strategizing that needs to work right now. I think this particular mandate has told us that old ways are not going to work. I mean, we need to really think very fast on our feet to figure out how to battle this. This is really like a huge thing right now. And in all fronts, we need to battle not only as women, but as people who want to protect every bit of, sense of democracy and sense of liberal ideology and sense of the constitution that we want to sort of hold very clearly together. We will have to battle all of that together right now.
I agree.
Thank you so much, Amelia. And this is precisely why this movement exists, because it is needed, because it is necessary, because there is a criticalness to to what we are talking about. And we see the fight on all fronts. We see attacks on all fronts in regards to women's rights and the rollback of women's rights in a massive way. That we are talking about how Sati is a incredible feat is horrifying to me, as someone who is raised Hindu. So it's I want to say to both of you, thank you so much for your time. We will continue having these discussions, but I do hope to the larger community that has watched this month-long series with our community members on their experiences in working in this realm and being community organizers, and the stories that they have to share, that the takeaway here is that we are all facing the same fight. This is not, across borders and languages. There is no difference right now. It is definitely on a global scale an orchestrated fight to roll back women's rights. And so the time to join this movement was yesterday, really. So thank you so much, Lily. Thank you so much, Natalie, for your time. Thank you to everybody who's listened, during this entire month, and we hope that you continue joining us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.